Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, John Haynes, A Conversation with Death. The man who rules the world and the angel of darkness take on a horde of demons in this inaugural John Haynes series adventure. Get John Haynes, A Conversation with Death for 99 cents on Kindle or in paperback today. New York City Mayor Bill DeBlasio is getting ready to destroy New York City's specialized high schools and many of the elementary and junior high schools on the Upper West Side. Now, your New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio says that he's trying to make efforts to diversify New York City's specialized high schools and many of the elementary and junior high schools on the Upper West Side. But when I take a look at the actions he's getting ready to do to diversify those schools, he's going to do more damage to those schools than he thinks. Now, your New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, he believes that he's going to improve these schools by adding diversity to these schools. And he believes that by recruiting all these inner city kids to go to these specialized high schools and these public schools that are elementary and middle schools on the Upper West Side, he's going to give black and Latino kids a chance to do better. However, when I take a critical look at his actions to diversify these schools, they mirror the actions of liberals who decided they wanted to go bus kids in Boston in the 1970s. Now, back in the 1970s, there was this campaign to bus inner city kids into white areas of Boston and diversify those schools. And what happened was there were numerous protests regarding these inner city kids coming to that Boston area and to those schools. And while these people who lived in those areas, they tried to sue to keep those black kids out of those schools, what eventually happened was those people wound up losing their case in court. And then after they lost their case in court, what they did was move out of those areas. So the attempt to try to integrate those schools wound up becoming a complete failure because all the white people who lived in those areas, what they did was they packed up their bags, packed up their resources, and then left that area of Boston, leaving only the African American children in those schools. And then, as those African American children remained in those schools that once were top performing schools started to become underperforming schools. And the reason why they became underperforming schools was because the top performing white students, their parents decided they just did not want their children in the schools with these children from the inner city. And because those people had economic resources and controlled economic resources, they divested from those Boston neighborhoods, moved to other neighborhoods, and left that school district to be what it was. And this is what many people fear is going to happen to New York City's public schools, because the specialized high schools have predominantly white and Asian students. And many of the white and Asian students who go to the specialized high schools and the schools on Manhattan's Upper West Side, these people have economic resources. And because they have access to economic resources, what they're going to do is, if they cannot win in court, what they're going to do is divest from New York City. And this is what your Bill de Blasio just doesn't understand about campaigns to so-called diversify public schools, is that when people have access and control of economic resources, what they're going to do is, when you try to force diversity on them, is take their economic resources, pack up their bags, and then move to another area, taking tax dollars out of your city and taking economic money out of your city and taking resources out of your city. So all of that is what will happen with this campaign to so-called diversify public schools. Now, your Bill de Blasio, again, believes that he's doing the right thing and trying to give Black and Latino children a chance to do well and get opportunities to work with kids from other schools. But when it comes down to people, people are going to go where they have their money. People who have resources, they really don't want to be around Black and Latino children. And that's nothing anybody can do about that, because when you have money, you have power. And when people have money and power, they're going to use their money and power to move away from these Black and Latino children who are from the inner city, especially if they're underperforming kids. Because when it comes down to white people and Asian people, they are like this. They're going to have their enclave because they have economic resources. And because they have economic resources, what they're going to do is they're going to start taking their kids and putting them in private schools, or they're going to take their kids and they're just going to move out of the New York City area, and they're going to move their kids away from there. So what's going to happen is many of these top performing public schools that are in Manhattan right now, and these specialized high schools, their performance is going to decline, just like many of the public schools I went to as a kid back in the 1980s. And the reason why many of those public schools that I went to, like the IS 148 and Park West High School, had such poor performance was based on the whole liberal idea that guys like Bill DeBlasio had, that, oh, if we take these poor performing students and put them in with good kids, they'll see the model of the good kids and then want to act just like them. Well, as a student of the New York City public schools, I can tell you honestly that model is a complete failure. And the reason why it's a complete failure is because good kids like myself who wanted to perform well, we most of the time were winding up getting bullied, getting harassed, getting threatened, and getting attacked every day, and having to deal with issues like anxiety and depression because we had to go into this hostile environment that was created by many of these dysfunctional individuals who came from these single mother households. And these guys who came from these single mother households, they were not about academic performance. No, they were all about social currency, and they were all about sneakers and girlfriends and starting fights over people looking at them because they could not perform academically. In many cases, when it came down to many of those people who were from the inner city, especially from these single mother households, these kids, they were not there to get an education. They were only in that classroom because moms wanted to get a welfare check, or they just wanted to make sure that they got this kid out of the house because they had a man in the home, and they really were not about academic performance. And because they were not about academic excellence, they lived to make other people miserable. And this is something your Bill DeBlasio and many on the left don't understand in their campaign to diversify these schools, is that in your plan to campaign to diversify these schools, you're going to make them hostile environments for the kids who actually want to learn. Because the kids who want to learn in New York City public schools, they have the hardest time learning in these environments, especially these junior high schools and these high schools, because they're literally like prisons and prison camps, because this small group of individuals come into the school and they wreak so much havoc that you cannot have a safe learning environment. And because the environment is not safe, kids don't really want to go there. And kids who can perform, like myself back in the day, they get anxiety, they get depression, they get scared, and then they don't want to go to school and they don't want to be bothered with school because the environment is so hostile due to these individuals just coming there looking for trouble that you can't get anything done. And the reason why you can't get anything done is because when it comes down to these schools wind up becoming cages. And because they become cages, what happens is Many of the faculty, they wind up shutting down because they wind up overwhelmed by these children's behavior, especially a lot of these males. Because when I look at a lot of female teachers and I think about what happened to them when these disruptive individuals were in the classroom, what they would do is they would just completely shut down, and the environment becomes apathetic because females cannot deal with this child's behavior, especially in adolescence, where this kid is just acting out and being emotional and being violent. So they just shut down, and the kids who are in the classroom, the kids who are trying to learn, like I was back in the day, what happens is they wind up becoming frustrated. They wind up not wanting to go to school, and this is what leads to the school turning into a poor performing school, because the good kids who are supposed to be the model for good behavior, they don't want the bad kids wind up driving those kids out of the school, like I was driven out of Park West back in 1990, and they wind up going to other schools. And when it comes down to many of those parents, I can understand what they're going through, because these schools that they have built and worked together towards building to become quality schools, we have your Bill DeBlasio trying to destroy these schools, and he says he's doing it all in the name of diversity, but the people who he's trying to bring into these schools, he doesn't understand there's a reason why they can't come into these schools, because they're not about academic excellence. And the reason why they're not about academic excellence is because these kids, a lot of them don't want to study, they don't want to work hard, and a lot of them will sit there and complain about how they're not being given a chance, but a lot of these people don't want to do the work. They don't want to sit down here and study. They don't want to sit down here and work hard. And if given a chance, they will just completely fail. And the reason why they will completely fail is because they will be entering an environment where they have to compete. And when it comes down to many of these kids, they're just not ready to compete. They will sit there, and because they can't compete and can't do the work on this level, that's when they will start trying to start trouble with other people, start fights with other people, and they will destabilize these schools. I look at schools like your Stuyvesant High School and many of those schools on the Upper West Side, and the reason why they are good environments for education is because there's active and heavy parental involvement. There are standards for academics, and many of the kids are raised to be extremely well behaved. And because there are standards there, this is why these schools are top schools. But when you start bringing in kids from inner city parts of the area, like many of these Black and Latino kids come from, these single mother households, what's going to happen is your school is not going to be about academic excellence anymore, because teachers are going to be too busy trying to discipline disruptive individuals and trying to deal with disruptive individuals to be able to focus on learning. The reason why these schools have such high quality and have high performing students is because the students there are focused on education. They want to learn, they want to do well, and they are in an environment where they believe they are safe. When you bring in these individuals that Bill DeBlasio wants to bring in, you're not going to have an environment that's focused on academic excellence, because you're going to be spending most of your time dealing with discipline issues. And with Bill DeBlasio's policies for the school system, it's going to be next to impossible to deal with discipline issues, because your Bill DeBlasio got rid of suspension. And his idea of discipline is we'll send them to a counselor's office where these individuals will sit there playing with an iPad for a couple of hours, all because the kid doesn't want to do the work or is frustrated because the work is too hard for them. And this is the nightmare that is getting ready to come to many of these New York City public schools on the Upper West Side and these specialized high schools, because when you have people talking about diversity, what they don't understand is there's ways to get diversity, but you have to get diversity based on merit. If you want to get more Black and Latino kids into specialized high schools like Stuyvesant, Bronx Science, Brooklyn Tech, you really need to start focusing on prepping those kids at the junior high school level and the elementary school level by making sure that these kids want to compete, and making sure that the kids who want to compete are prepared to be on a fast track towards working towards passing that exam and working towards doing that type of rigorous work. When you have kids who are sitting there believing that, oh, I failed the test and I got under the 20% and they're going to set aside seats for them, that doesn't give them an incentive to go out here and do better. No, it leads to people going out here believing that all they have to do is meet a certain benchmark or be a certain ethnicity and they'll be allowed an opportunity to come into this specialized school, but that doesn't allow a person to be prepared to compete in a specialized school or go to one of these schools on the Upper West Side. And again, when you try to force diversity, like what I see Bill DeBlasio getting ready to do, what is going to happen is those people who live in those areas, they're going to take their kids out of those public schools and they're going to move. Either they're going to put them in private schools where they can have a say over their child's education and who their children are around, or they're just going to move out of the New York City area, taking tax dollars with them. And when I see what the big picture is with those schools is, what's going to happen is you're going to have a migration pattern, the same that happened to the Boston public schools, and you're going to see the Upper West Side turn into a ghetto, and you're going to see many of these specialized schools winding up closing because they just can't meet the standards for academic excellence. And that would be really sad to see because schools like Stuyvesant, Bronx Science, and Brooklyn Tech, they are environments that are safe for the best and our brightest students, and I'd hate to see them destroyed because Bill DeBlasio believes he's giving a chance to dysfunctional individuals when it's up to those individuals to get themselves up to that level, not have somebody bring the bar down to them. Because when I look at what Bill DeBlasio is getting ready to do, he's bringing the bar down instead of insisting that students step up to get to the next level. If you'd like to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to try some of my SJS Direct publications, you may do so by clicking the link to Amazon.com. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.